To accompany Senate House Library's current exhibition on Charles Dickens and popular culture, Professor Michael Slater discusses some of the items within the display.
What evidence do we have for Dickens's early reading as a child?
Well, in David Copperfield, there's a passage which his friend John Forster, who wrote the first biography of Dickens, says is literally autobiographical. And it's the description of David when he's particularly unhappy after these terrible Mr. Murdstone, his stepfather, has come into the household and ill-treated him and so forth. And his great consolation is reading these books that belong to his dead father. It so happens that John Dickens, Dickens's father, did have a little collection of books which somehow didn't go to the pawn shop, and so Dickens, as a young boy, was able to read them, and he transfers this experience directly into David Copperfield in this passage from chapter 4, I think it is. He says, "My father had left a small collection of books in a little room upstairs to which I had access, and which nobody else in our house ever troubled. From that blessed room, Roderick Random, Peregrine Pickle, Humphrey Clinker, Tom Jones, the Vicar of Wakefield, Don Quixote, Gil Blas, and Robinson Crusoe came out, a glorious host to keep me company. They kept alive my fancy and my hope of something beyond that place and time. They and the Arabian Nights and the tales of the genie, and did me no harm. For whatever harm was in some of them was not there for me. I knew nothing of it. It's astonishing to me now how I found time, in the midst of my pourings and blunderings over heavier themes, to read those books as I did." And he goes on to talk about how he puts Mr. and Miss Murdstone into all the bad characters in the books, and himself into all the heroic ones, and so on. But it's an interesting range of books there, isn't it? He makes several references to the tales of the genie in his fiction, but the most dramatic is the reference to Misna at a crucial point in Great Expectations, just before the reappearance of Magwitch, when Pip learns the true source of his wealth, that is not coming to him from Miss Havisham, as he had always fondly supposed, but from this horrible creature from his childhood, this terrible convict Magwitch, who is about to appear to him. But just before that chapter, at the end of the last chapter, Dickens uses the Misna story to great effect. Shall I read the... In the Eastern story, the heavy slab that was to fall on the bed of state in the flush of conquest was slowly wrought out of the quarry. The tunnel for the rope to hold it in its place was slowly carried through the leagues of rock. The slab was slowly raised and fitted in the roof. The rope was rove to it and slowly taken through the miles of hollow to the great iron ring. All being made ready with much labour, and the hour come, the Sultan was aroused in the dead of night, and the sharpened axe that was to sever the rope from the great iron ring was put into his hand, and he struck with it, and the rope parted and rushed away, and the ceiling fell. So in my case, all the work near and afar that tended to the end had been accomplished, and in an instant the blow was struck, and the roof of my stronghold dropped upon me. So that's the most dramatic use, as I say, of the tales of the genie, but they're always cropping up. So Dickens recalls his childhood reading also in The Christmas Carol, where he specifically is talking about the Arabian Nights and Robinson Crusoe, which I think was, I think his absolute favourite novel was The Vicar of Wakefield. But Robinson Crusoe came very close to it. And in a very significant passage in the Christmas Carol, when Scrooge is taken back to his past, right, the ghost of Christmas past, and he sees this poor forlorn boy in this desolate schoolroom who hasn't been taken home for the holidays and so on. And it's a kind of image of Dickens, the desolation of his childhood just before the blacking factory period and so on, and how he was consoled by reading these, and his imagination kept alive, as he said, is so important to him, by reading the Arabian Nights, etc. And this is depicted in Scrooge as a child. He sees himself sitting there forlorn in the schoolroom, and then suddenly this wonderful glamorous creature looks in through the window, which is Ali Baba. "Why, it's Ali Baba!" Scrooge exclaimed in ecstasy. "It's dear old honest Ali Baba. Yes, yes, I know. One Christmas time, when yonder solitary child was left here all alone, he did come, for the first time, just like that. Poor boy. And Valentine," said Scrooge, "and his wild brother Orson, there they go. And what's his name, who was put down in his drawers asleep at the gates of Damascus? Don't you see him? And the Sultan's groom turned upside down by the genie. There he is upon his head. Serve him right. I'm glad of it. What business had he to be married to the princess?" To hear Scrooge expending all the earnestness of his nature on such subjects in a most extraordinary voice, between laughing and crying, and to see his heightened and excited face, would have been a surprise indeed to his business friends in the city. "There's the parrot," cried Scrooge, "green body and yellow tail, with a thing like a lettuce growing out of the top of his head. There he is. Poor Robin Crusoe, he called him when he came home again after sailing round the island. Poor Robin Crusoe. Where have you been, Robin Crusoe? The man thought he was dreaming, but he wasn't. It was the parrot, you know. And there goes Friday, running for his life to the little creek. Hello! Whoop! Hello!" Then, with a rapidity of transition very foreign to his usual character, he said, in pity for his former self, "Poor boy," and cried again. And another very important book for Dickens from his childhood reading was Le Sage's The Diable, what he's called in French. This was an early 18th century novel by the French novelist Le Sage, translated as The Limping Devil. And it's a story about this young man, Don Cleophas, who encounters this, he actually releases him from a bottle, I think, this lame demon, who, as a reward, shows him, takes all the rooftops off the houses in Madrid and shows him all the wicked goings on, what people are really like. It's a satirical novel, basically, and you have this wonderful episode of the demon pulling the roofs off the houses to show people up to all sorts of nefarious activity inside. And he makes Dickens makes a very striking reference to this in Dombey and Son, when he's talking about the complete blindness the moral blindness of Mr. Dombey to his situation. His pride is completely sealing him off from understanding what's going on around him. And Dickens writes that Dombey is like many people who don't really see what's happening around them. And then he says, referring to the Le Sage novel, "Oh, for a good spirit who would take the housetops off with a more potent and benignant hand than the lame demon in the tale, and show a Christian people what dark shapes issue from amidst their homes, to swell the retinue of the destroying angel as he moves forth among them." Very powerful reference there.
So in addition to Grimaldi, Dickens also mentions seeing some Shakespearean productions as a child.
That's at the local theatre in Rochester, where he wrote a wonderful essay later on for his journal, All the Year Round, in a series called The Uncommercial Traveller, an essay called Dulborough Town, which is actually about Rochester and his memories of it as a child. And he remembers particularly being taken to the theatre, the small theatre in Rochester. It was within those walls I had learned, as from a page of English history, how that wicked king, that's Richard III, slept in wartime on a sofa much too short for him, and how fearfully his conscience troubled his boots. And he goes on to say, many wondrous secrets of nature had I come to the knowledge of in that sanctuary, in that little theatre, of which not the least terrific were that the witches in Macbeth bore an awful resemblance to the Thanes and other proper inhabitants of Scotland, and that the good King Duncan couldn't rest in his grave, but was constantly coming out of it and calling himself somebody else. And he's talking about the exigencies of these small strolling companies where people had to double up all the parts and so on. But to the child, it's wonderful that Duncan's killed and then he comes back as somebody else. And Dickens always had that child's eye view, as it were, of seeing both what was really there and what we all pretend is there. That's the essence, really, of his art, I think. I mean, he just loved anything and everything to do with the theatre. And towards the end of his life, very near the end of his life, he said to a friend of his that his ideal existence would be to be the manager of a great theatre with a wonderful company, and he should have absolute control of it. He should decide what was put on and how it was staged and everything, and that would be his absolute ideal existence. Not as a great novelist, but as the manager of a great theatre.